These are sort of beautiful acts. If you want to know what religion is, or should be, that's encapsulated in that moment. A black woman, a white man, hugging the murderer and one of the victims, the murdered's wife, saying, "I forgive you." It's beautiful. And how much people would move on and become better people, learn from that terrible act, never do it again, but not just not do those things again, to learn real compassion, real wisdom, and real way of moving forward. Already just that particular example moved me to actually to try and move you. If a woman could forgive the murderer of the person she loved, can't you forgive far, far lesser crimes? So it can be done. And how beautiful it is to be done. And why shouldn't it be done? Let's do it. Because we have such great forgiveness. We're actually letting go of the past. The whole business is being settled. Imagine just how much thinking, how much action, how much worry, how much planning, just how many headaches, how much space it takes up in your mind and in your life when you think you have to seek revenge. But as soon as you say, "I forgive," the matter is dropped and there's no more business for you. You can be free from that terrible thing of the past which just eats you up, which does create the cancers and the sicknesses. You're free of that. And you can move on at peace with your life because you've become at peace with your past. Beautiful act. And I mention that often because you may be able to forgive other people which have hurt you. You don't need to keep carrying it and carrying it and carrying it around so long. It's a time to let it go. Otherwise, where else can you find peace of mind? What's done is finished, said that great monk. Therefore, he could go and meditate in peace without worrying about the unfinished hall. Or even the stuff which you have done. All the guilty stuff which you feel terrible about. One of my favourite stories, which wasn't in the book, but I've said here many times, I don't really feel guilty about this, even though I broke a promise to a lady by telling you this. Part of my job, we do counselling and talk to people, and this particular woman was dying again of cancer. So she came to our most Friday evenings, and then she decided she really wanted to have like a bit longer time and having a bit of a heart-to-heart. And part of this, because I knew that she was about to die soon, I wanted her to become free from her past so she could die well. So I asked her in confidence, "What's the worst thing you've ever done? What's that act which you hid from other people, which you might carry to your grave and feel terrible about? And can you tell me?" It's obviously after many weeks of getting to know her, she could actually trust me. And she said to me, the worst thing, it took a while to get it out of her, the worst thing she'd ever done was that she'd kissed another man when she was married, not her husband. And I said, "That's the worst thing you've ever done?" "Yeah. I never told my husband this, but I kissed another man." So if that's the worst thing you've done, you've done a pretty good life as far as I'm concerned. I'm sure many of you have done much worse than that. But what really struck me for her, there was such a release actually to tell someone this thing which was eating her up inside, but not only just to tell someone, the very fact that she told me and saw my reaction, she realised for the first time it wasn't that bad. But when you keep it to yourself, these small little things which you've done, you make them to be huge things, as if you're going to go to hell for this, as if you're going to be punished for eternity for kissing another man when you're married to a girl or whatever. No, she was married to a boy, that's right. It's hot weather, my brain doesn't work. Well, I forgive myself that. So that when actually you acknowledge it, actually many of these things which you feel so guilty about, especially you tell it to a good friend, then you find out it's not such a big deal anyway. And you can let it go. She could actually let that go now so she didn't feel so guilty when she died. Sometimes you need to acknowledge it first of all, and then forgive what you've done in the past. And one of the nice things about being like a monk for so many years, and many people have told me their secrets, and it was an interesting experience when I first started this sort of job. And maybe if any of you are counsellors here, you probably have the same experience which I had. It's classic counselor's experience. First time someone opens up to you, you hear, oh, that's really interesting. And the next person who opens up to you, I've heard this before. And the next one who comes to you, here we go again. People think that they're so sort of individual and they're sort of wrong actions, and no one else has done those. As if that somehow that your actions are just the worst in the whole world. But whenever actually people actually open up, you're all pretty much the same. So the worst things which you have done, probably pretty much the same as the person sitting next to you. Maybe different in slight details, small variations, but pretty much the same. Because we're human beings, that's all. And so when we accept our humanity, and we don't demand perfection, we can be at peace with ourselves, with the imperfection of our past. We can actually let it go. We don't need to mend it, to change it, to fix it. There are such great fixes in life. We want to fix up the problems. And there's no end of problems. That's why we say we're in a fix. We're trying to fix things. We don't fix things, we let them go. We leave them alone. The past is finished. We'll never find peace of mind until we get to this stage of forgiveness and also forgiveness of ourselves, letting go of guilt. Number one, those two. Sometimes again people ask, how do you forgive yourself and others? And of course, the way to forgiveness is to realize that you're worth forgiving and the other person is worth forgiving. I always say that's the step number one, to let go of the past through forgiveness. To realize that that person and yourself are worth it. Sometimes it's so hard when we see someone, say, who's seeing the murder of her husband. How can you forgive that? To see that human being, she saw him just weeping, shaking with fear, he was feeling so bad about that. She saw something in that policeman who killed her husband, something she could respect, something worth saving. So she forgave him. And that beautiful thing inside that murdered policeman grew. That's why you've heard me say here before, there is no such thing as a murderer. It's a person who's murdered. There is no such thing as a thief. There's a person who stole. There is no such thing as a cheat. There's a person who's cheated. If you understand that, you understand why forgiveness is possible. Because there's something more than that act which is staying with you no matter what you've done, which you feel guilty for. There's something more inside of you. And there's 1 or 2, 3, 4, I don't know how many acts which you may feel terrible about. Let's get specific. And how many girls have had an abortion? Have you forgiven that yet? Or do you still carry that around inside of you, thinking, what a terrible thing I've done. Oh, I'm evil, I'm going to have to pay for this. Oh, please. Hopefully, in spiritual religion like Buddhism, you are forgiven. You don't go to hell for these things. We don't have going to hell for anything. If you go to hell, you send yourself down there. It's your fault, not sort of anybody else. You're completely free. Hell is a place with an open door. You send yourself there because of guilt. You can walk out any time if you understand what love and forgiveness is.